Hello everybody and welcome to Ninjas 96's Game Awards 2019. Now I'm going to be joined by Dan and Charlotte, who you may recognise from such films as the Pokemon Center vlog and probably some Smash content as well. I think Dan was there for that. And we're going to be talking about our experiences of gaming in 2019. Now, I should qualify that statement by saying we are focusing on games released this year, obviously, but a game will still qualify if we played it this year, even if it didn't release this year. Personally, I don't think that comes up very often, but I know for the other two it probably will do. There's going to be a whole bunch of categories that we've agreed on, and we have not discussed any of these picks until we start the video call in a second. So I'm really excited to find out what everyone's going to pick. And what I'm going to do afterwards is either in the description of this video or on Facebook or on Twitter somewhere, I'm going to put up a poll, and every single game that me, Dan or Charlotte nominate as a gold pick for any of the categories will be voted on by you, the public, semi-public, and that's how we will determine the official Game of the Year 2019. So each of the three of us will have our official Game of the Year 2019, and then you will be able to also vote and have a say. I don't know how long this is actually going to run for. I will probably split it up into a bunch of parts, but we're going to be doing categories first, then we're going to go on to Game of the Year overall. So sit back, relax, and you can feel free to listen to this while you're at work or something, because it's going to be kind of podcasty. So yeah, I hope you enjoy. Okay, so hello Dan and Charlotte.
Hello. Bonjour.
So our first question is our favourite game. Could you describe 2019 in gaming as a Pokemon?
As a Pokemon. Okay. I'm gonna go with something like Octillery, I feel, for me. Which is that I should have liked it. And then once you get down into the details, you realise, actually, there's not a great deal there.
That is very interesting. Charlotte, do you want to go next?
Yeah. I'm going to go with Thievul.
Oh, a new one. Very nice.
Yeah, because, well, when I first found Thievul, I was so excited. It looked amazing. And I feel like there's been a lot that I've been like, oh, I want to play that. I want to play that this year. But just these things just didn't happen. Just like how I ended up ditching Thievul.
Yeah, my narrative for the games I wish I played is very similar, but my stance for this question is actually the exact opposite to what you said. I went with Pyukumuku. It's one of my favourite Alolan Pokemon, and I like it because everyone else, right, thinks it's just a stupid cucumber. And, let's be honest, this year's been a bit of a stupid cucumber. But I made it work, and it was one of my strongest Pokemon in Sun and Moon. And even though, bit of a stupid cucumber, I think this year has actually been alright. There's a lot of games that we've missed out on, nothing like Breath of the Wild quality. But I think there's a decent amount of lower grade games out there. Our next category is Best Character or Characters. This is one I added this morning. So, who wants to go first with this one?
I will. It's Kevin.
Who's Kevin?
Kevin is the world's best character from Overcooked. And he's just perfect, I mean, he's so, you love him, but you also hate him. And it's amazing because he doesn't even speak.
He does.
Not even audibly. He just says bark. There's so much character in it. And you can pet him, and that makes me happy.
Okay, wonderful. Well...
And he has really awful levels. that make you want to cry, but you still love it. So, it's Kevin.
So
guys.
Kevin the doggo is your pick. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny you should mention that actually. Because you know Gromit in Wallace and Gromit.
I thought you were going to say Onion King.
No. And how expressive he is, and like how sad it is when the inanimate droids in Star Wars are sad. The goose in Untitled Goose Game is the best character of 2019. I don't give a damn about Kevin.
Hey, that's not on. You do give a damn about Kevin.
My goose would wreck him. Anyway, that's not the point.
Your goose will be able to reach Kevin. Sits up and sort of like,
It's a goose, he's got a long neck. Anyway, even though he honks, but he has a default honk, it's not like an emotive honk. You know exactly what kind of mischief that honk means. And he's got so much personality, given that he can't speak. My honourable mention, though, is Banjo-Kazooie from Smash Brothers, Smash DLC, because their character animations are quite entertaining to watch, and they're really, like all of the characters in Smash, they're really true to their source material, which I thought was really... I mean, it's Banjo. He's the best character in Smash, so he's going to be the best character of 2019, isn't he? What about Dan?
So far, we've pretty much all been animals, haven't they? Which is not a good indictment on the state of humanity currently, is it? I don't think I have much of a nomination for this category.
Not
really at all.
Okay, well, so we've got two picks. We've got Goose and Kevin for the vote. That'll be fun. I think Goose is going to win, though.
people are wrong. Like to say. And you're terrible for encouraging it.
It's just...
It's all about Kevin.
He's just a silly goose. What can you do? Okay, category number 2. The games we wish we'd played. So I have quite a few games on this list, so I'll let one of you two start. Games you wish you played.
I have an easy nomination for this because I think the reason I've avoided purchasing it is because I think I'm going to get given it as a Christmas present. So Luigi's Mansion 3 is my pick for this.
Oh, yeah.
For the reason I've just described.
What about Charlotte?
Mine's Mario Maker.
Mario Maker, that's an interesting one.
Yeah, because I was really looking forward to it when I saw that it was coming out. And, you know, given I make Mario levels in my dreams, it's kind of perfect. But I just never got around to buying it. I think because Dan bought it and it seemed pointless to have 2 copies. And then, I don't know, I was just playing other stuff. It never happened. But I kind of wish I had.
Yes, good choice. I have loads of games this year. I think you touched on it in the 2019 as a Pokemon. There's loads of games that came out that at the start of the year I was like, yeah, I'll definitely get that. That looks amazing. And just didn't. So my top 3, or my more unique 3, because I figured Luigi's Mansion would be on at least one of your lists. Fire Emblem 3 Houses. I was so excited for that game. I thought that was going to be the game that got me into Fire Emblem. And just the timing, like it came out, September? Just as I was going back to university. And I can't spend 18... The number I've got written down is 100 million hours to it. I just can't put that much time into it. But then my 2 honourable mentions are Lady Layton and the Resident Evil 2 remake. Both of which are games that I really do want to play, but for whatever reason just haven't got around to it yet. Two. Next category, most anticipated. What games were you most excited to play this year? Take it away, Charlotte.
I was very excited for Mario Maker for the reasons previously outlined, because it just looked amazing. But yeah.
Or
Just,
for reasons we're about to mention, because time travel.
yeah. Yeah, just looks so exciting. That's it, really.
That's interesting. Dan, do you have a most anticipated game?
I think it's probably a little bit of an unfair thing to put in this category, but Pokemon Sword and Shield probably would count as my most anticipated. If you'd asked me in sort of late July what my most anticipated game was, I would have told you Pokemon Sword and Shield hands down. If you'd asked me about 3 or 4 days later, it would have completely changed. So I think if you take sort of my anticipation as a raw, my most anticipated at any one time in 2019, it was Pokemon Sword and Shield.
Yeah, similar for me. Now, it turns out I didn't buy very many games at launch this year, whereas I felt like I did a lot more in the last couple of years for Switch. But Link's Awakening was one I was very, very excited for from its... Was it revealed at E3 or demonstrate? Whatever. From when it was revealed to when it actually released, I was really excited for it. But I didn't buy it at launch, and the only game I've actually bought at launch this whole year is Pokemon Sword and Shield. So I kind of have to pick Sword and Shield. Next category, most surprising game this year. These are games that we were expecting to suck but turned out okay, or vice versa. Who would like to go first?
I will, but mine doesn't really fall into that category. Well, I didn't expect it to suck. That's not the reason I found this surprising. So my choice is Ring Fit Adventure. And it was most surprising because I saw it and was like, oh, that's a thing. And then, like, completely forgot about it. Then one day, literally, like, woke up and was like, I'm going to get that game, and I went and got it. Just randomly. Which was a bit surprising. But, yeah. So, that's my choice.
That's pretty good. I'll jump in there because one of my silver picks are Ring Fit Adventure and Labo VR, because both of them, when they were announced and like the trailers, you watch them and think, oh, Nintendo's doing a gimmick again, and they're actually really good.
Yeah, that's the thing I think I thought as well with, like, what I didn't realise was just how much of like a fitness game it actually is. You kind of look at it and you expect it to be like I don't know, Wii Fit, or just this sort of like, oh, you can run with it and you're just kind of using the motion controls and stuff, and it's not really that big a deal, but it takes it very seriously. And yeah, it does it well.
Yeah, Ring Fit definitely surprised me. Another honourable mention I have is Ark Survival Evolved, because, and I'll go into this a bit more a bit later, I was so expecting to hate that game. Everything about it is detestable, but I really love it. But I won't go into any more detail than that. Dan, do you have a pick before I go with my gold?
Yeah. I only thought of it in the final hour, if you like. But I've played maybe the first, what would we say, 2.5 hours of The Last of Us.
Ah.
And to say I despised it might be a little bit weak.
Really? That is not what I was expecting to come out of your mouth hole.
I think you just struggle to get behind the idea of it. Like, I'm very much like, I love exploring and doing all of that sort of thing, but you can't sound like that.
I don't know where this sort of broke down, but I think for me, I don't mind video games as a story delivery mechanism. Clearly, some of the best stories ever have been told through video games. No problem.
Pokemon Sword and Shield.
For me, that The Last of Us put the story about 7 tiers above the gameplay, and I found myself not actually wanting. I didn't care.
I think it's hard after the buzz has died down as well.
Yeah.
And like
I
at the
don't-
time, I feel like a lot of it was also to do with how fantastic it looked, and now it doesn't look like that either.
Well, that's why I don't like getting hyped about graphics in general. But
Can I just
It's-
ask to clarify, what is the gameplay?
it's you walk around until the game tells you to click a button because you've bumped into an object. And then, I'm doing this in a slightly more disparaging way than I intended, but this is the game. Feel free to jump in if I'm wrong. And then occasionally you get in a gunfight where you move like you're wading through mud. The idea is it's supposed to be like semi-realistic
Yeah.
gunfight, which of course makes it horribly dull. And the most fun I had was flinging bottles at people, which I could have done in
Real
Just
life,
about.
as you frequently do.
in real life or in any other zombie survival game. What I found myself thinking was somewhere between Dead Island and The Last of Us is the definitive pinnacle zombie game, where you can actually enjoy playing it and enjoy the story. But what I found, just personally, was that trying to wade through the gameplay of a game should not be difficult.
And I guess that's kind of why I saw it in such a different way as well, because when I first, played it, I didn't actually play it. I watched someone else play it. And when you're not having to deal with that stuff, it's a lot more enjoyable when you're watching someone play it.
Yeah, but for me, that's just make it a film. Just save me like 40 hours, turn it into a 2-hour film, and I'll just watch it.
Yeah.
I think as well, the sort of zombie genre, that's why, I always get this mixed. Dead Rising, is that the one where you literally just mow through hordes of enemies in hilarious ways?
Yeah.
That's what a zombie game should be. Like a zombie survival horror kind of game, like Resident Evil 7. I think Resident Evil 7 actually does it better from what I've experienced, in that it's a nice mixture between walking around, understanding the story and the lore and stuff, and then a boss battle kicks in and you're like, uh-oh. From what you've explained.
Yeah.
But my most surprising game this year is you describing your most surprising game this year. No, my pick is Tetris 99.
Yeah, that's
Because what person in the entire world wasn't surprised when Tetris 99 happened?
Yeah, that's true. The definitive battle royale game, I feel.
Yeah.
It's,
I actually, stop me if this is one of your picks for best multiplayer game. But do you think it's actually a multiplayer game? Would you call it a multiplayer game?
I like this.
we did discuss it, I think.
But yeah, it's tough.
The only reason I would caution against not calling it a multiplayer game is that if you've ever seen me play a game of it, what you will realise is that I'm not delivering a torrent of abuse to an empty wall. I'm delivering it to the people on the other end of the Battle Royale who are sending me 10 lines of garbage at once. So, and I frequently will wait until the last second and then send them 15 lines of garbage in one go, screaming obscenity, and then knock them out of the game. So, if that doesn't encapsulate the multiplayer experience, I'm not sure what does.
And I think as well, Tetris 99, once you've got past that initial wave of what the ever-living hell were they thinking, once you get past that, like, it's Tetris, but better. And that's another level of surprise.
I can't imagine playing normal Tetris anymore. It's just, yeah.
Who'd have thought they'd have actually made, like, a definitive Tetris?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my most surprising, purely on the basis that it surprised me twice. And it's free. I don't like bringing price into this kind of discussion, but it's free. Ring Fit Adventure is like, what, 60, 80 quid?
70.
Yeah,
Pretty sure it's 70.
So yeah.
Cheaper than the gym, though. It's true. It's cheaper than the gym.
About 80 quid more expensive than going jogging, though.
Yeah, but jogging's boring. And I'm bad at it.
Are you good at Ring Fit Adventure?
Don't No, Dad, I'm going to Ring Fit Adventure.
Well, I'll give two arguments to this. You're better than me at Ring Fit Adventure, but when it finishes a level and it goes light
it's so
exercise,
It goes, well done, you've completed some light exercise, or worse, very light exercise. And I'm like, mate, I'm knackered.
Okay, well, those are our most surprising games this year. That was quite interesting. Not what I expected.
yeah, considering I did not think of it until the very last second, and then in all seriousness,
Also, did I swear at the beginning of that?
I don't know, did you?
I don't know.
Maybe I said that. You were talking about.
So, I feel it's important to talk about our most disappointing game this year because we talk about. I've tried to, lots of positives. There's lots of positives this year, but there is some negatives. I'm going to go first because I have 3, and my bronze choice is actually Mario Maker 2. Now, it's a good game, and I enjoy playing it, but from the hype surrounding Mario Maker 1, I was expecting a lot more from it, and what it did for me was showed me how stale 2D Mario actually is. I don't feel like it reinvented 2D Mario for me. I feel like it just showed me everything 2D Mario can possibly do, and I just thought, yeah, that's about it, isn't it? So that's my bronze pick, and I'd like to stress that I did really enjoy it still. My silver is actually Dragon Quest Builders 2, which again I really enjoyed. And it sounds a lot like I hate building games. The main game of Dragon Quest Builders is fantastic. The post game is so restrictive. I had a plan to create a big city in the post game, free building, and I started building a railway, as you do, like in Minecraft or whatever. You put a light every now and then just to make sure it's lit up, and when it gets dark, you can still see. And it stopped me. I got a big red message saying you cannot place more than 50 light blocks around the island. And I tested it. I went from one corner of the island to the other. It carried over. It's the whole island. You're allowed 50 light blocks. How absurd is that? I've probably got more than 50 light bulbs in my house. But my actual most disappointing game this year, and the only one that I actually dislike the game, is Little Nightmares. I was so excited to play this game on Halloween. I've been looking forward to playing it for years, since it came out, really. I was waiting for the right time to pick it up when it was on sale. I bought it, and the loading times are so appalling, and the amount that I die because it's a difficult, well, maybe it's not a difficult game, but I died a decent amount. I was in loading screens at least 2/3 of my play time, and on Switch, it just made the game unplayable. I haven't finished it. I think I've got about 1/3 of the way through the game, maybe. So that's my most disappointing game. But I feel like it would be unfair not to put Pokemon Sword and Shield as an honourable mention. So I'm going to pass on to Dan.
Yeah. So it was also on my most anticipated games. I'm not really sure. It's all a bit weird. I was referred to it as one game, but it is technically 2. I think when we got the most anticipated for it was when they announced Max Raid Battles. And so basically, for the first time in Pokemon, you could pretty much in real time do cooperative battles with other people, locally, online. It looked like the first step forward for Pokemon in terms of what you can actually do in it for a long time. And then I think history has made this seem further apart, but I think the same day
It was, so they announced the Wild Area Max Raid Battles at E3, and then in the Treehouse, which was potentially even straight after the trailer hit, there was the Treehouse event, and Masuda, or whoever it was, I think it was Masuda, came out and said, look, there's something I need to tell you about this game.
Yes, he says that you won't be able to transfer any Pokemon that aren't in the Galar Pokedex, so the new region in Sword and Shield, into new games. Which I think means Masuda has a relatively short memory, because I think he forgot when everybody was a little bit annoyed when you couldn't transfer Pokemon over from Gold and Silver and Crystal onto Ruby and Sapphire. But the difference being, this time there were no technical limitations, although they did attempt to blame technical limitations for the decision. They decided that the 400 odd Pokemon, I think it's exactly 400 actually, that are in the game are the only ones that can exist, that are physically in the game's code. So you can't transfer any Pokemon that aren't native. Just to stress for completeness, you actually can't transfer anything right now. The service that would be required to do that doesn't exist. So in terms of how it would affect the game right now, zero.
And I'm going to jump in just there and explain that despite this, personally, yes, I would rather them all be in there, but I don't see it as a problem. But Sword and Shield's story, its characters, they set up quite a lot of stuff early on, and they don't deliver on any of it throughout the whole game. And this is coming from someone who actually quite liked the game. But the story, the characters, unfinished as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that, and that's how I'll probably wrap this up, because I don't want to take this off on a long tangent. But the problem with Sword and Shield, and I don't particularly want to expand it in this way, but possibly Pokemon in general, is that there are a load of things that could be excellent, and they're not. Either because the game's unfinished, because they don't know how to flesh out an idea, they don't know how to balance an idea, or they, and this will forever baffle me, they rotate out concepts that were totally popular, or worse, features that were perfectly fine for other, often inferior, in the case of Sword and Shield, I mean, it's hard to argue they're anything other than inferior in the case of things like the trading options and stuff like that. Features. I just don't know how they'd have gotten to that point. So as far as the jump from Pokemon as a mainline core series from the DS up to the Switch, whose processing power can handle The Witcher 3 and all its DLC, this sort of fantastic leap we were supposed to get, it falls so far short of that that it's got to be the most disappointing game of the year.
Yeah, and I potentially would have put it at least silver, if not gold, but obviously I knew you were going to be in the conversation. And just for clarity, Charlotte, you didn't have one, or have you?
No, I have one that I considered putting in, but I think it's far too harsh, so...
No, be my guest. Mario Maker 2 and Dragon Quest Builders 2 are both excellent games that I really enjoy, so...
I'm not sure I really want it to be submitted as a full-on, like, this is my most disappointing game, but, Yoshi, I absolutely love it, but I'm just really disappointed by how short it is. Because there's lots of, like, there are reasons to go back and replay the levels, and I may well do that at some point, but considering how much I enjoyed the game, it'd be nice if it lasted a bit longer. I don't know how many hours it took me to do it in the end, but yeah, really enjoyed playing it, but just so short, and now it's like, you know, it's just been and gone so quick.
I would ask you some more questions about that, but that's a theme I would like to bring up a bit later on, so I will cut you there, and bear that in mind when we're talking a bit later. Art direction. I just clicked. I'm going to start that again. Art direction is our next category. Now, this is one that I actually lifted from the Proper Game Awards pretty much directly. This is category for the game with the best or most novel graphical choices. And surprise, surprise, I want to go last. So after you.
Okay. Mine, and as a, this is, I want to make clear, very heavily caveated, but it's Sword and Shield.
Ooh.
Yeah, because I frequently, when I'm going around exploring, which I do because I never do what I'm supposed to be doing, it looks amazing. Some of the towns look great. And I would like that to, I don't know, if they keep kind of doing that, I would like them to build on it. That's the thing, because I do think it looks really great, and I'm loving that when I'm walking around. But then you get stuff like all of the houses in town being identical, and bumping into walls that aren't there around buildings. All of that is pretty shoddy, but I do like the way it looks generally.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think Sword and Shield gets a bit of a bad rep when it comes to the graphics because, everyone screenshots the trees in the wild area, and the trees in the wild area do look bad. But I think it has both. It has some really, really beautiful areas, like the fairy Glimwood Tangle and whatever the fairy town is called. But that doesn't really excuse the crap bits either. What I thought you were going to say was Yoshi's Crafted World, because I think that game looks gorgeous.
I did consider that is very nice.
In fact, that's the main reason I didn't want to go first, was because Yoshi's Crafted World was going to be one of my picks. But I don't think it's a surprise to either of you. Link's Awakening. That game looks so beautiful. It looks so beautiful. Everyone hates it. Everyone else is like, it looks like toys. Zelda's not about toys. No. Those people are wrong. And if you're listening, if you're one of the people who thinks that and you're listening, I never want to see you again.
I think Dan's one of those people.
Excellent. 2 birds, 1 stone. I just think, slightly more objectively, even if you don't like the art style, that's okay. I'll let you have that. But the graphical fidelity of it, when you're actually playing it, it still looks really beautiful. There are genuinely times where I looked at my screen and thought, that looks like toys. That genuinely looks like there is a camera panning over with stop motion. And I think it's one of those things where it's opinion-based, whether you like the cartoony art style, the toy design of it. But the actual graphics of it support the game being really, really good. And I like it more than Yoshi, more because Yoshi's art direction. Yoshi's kind of known for being a bit wacky with its graphics. I had the Yarn Yoshi before, now it's got Paper Yoshi, so it's kind of like, oh, what weird thing is Yoshi going to be made out of next? So yeah, my nomination is Link's Awakening. Dan, do you have a nomination for this one?
No, but I was just going to add that for Sword and Shield, I feel like one of the things that gets missed is that every single time they release a new Pokemon game, they have to design, a lot of the time 80, 100 plus new designs, and the new designs, a great many of them are instant favourites.
That's a good point. I didn't think about the actual Pokemon themselves. And yeah, you're right. There's, I feel like this is potentially a discussion for either Game of the Decade or a completely different thing. But I was thinking about it when I was looking through my Game of the Decade picks, and I thought there's a distinct what's the word? The little equals with a cross through it. Is the opposite of a correlation between the quality of the gameplay and the quality of the Pokemon designs. Because I think when the golden era of Pokemon designs was X, Y, Sun and Moon, and Sword and Shield, but that's also when the gameplay started to falter.
Yeah, I actually think when they made the models for X and Y, and they went to great pains to feature-proof the models for X and Y, they continue to make good designs, and that's never really been much in question.
That's not strictly true. I know lots of people. I don't necessarily trust them, but I know lots of people who looked at the whole roster of Sun and Moon and went, no. And same for every region, but I think that's just every region has that, don't they?
Yeah, and I think it's a vocal minority a lot of the time. I think if you showed people, if you showed someone who hadn't seen any Pokemon before, the Gen 1 designs and the Gen 5 designs, I don't think they would say, well, it's probably weird to choose Gen 5 based off the Gen 1 ones, but I don't think they would say, oh, this set is significantly better than this set. I think it's one of those things where it colours people's judgment, I think, sometimes, their view of the game.
And you're absolutely right. Every time they revealed a new Pokemon for this set, if we just focus on Sword and Shield for the purpose of this argument, every single time there was one that people went ballistic for. Wooloo. So many people love Wooloo. Corviknight, straight away, fan favourite. Galarian Ponyta. What was the other one that came to my head? Sirfetch'd. A lot of them feel like straight away they've gone on people's key component lists.
I feel Applin deserves a mention, though.
Oh, yeah.
he cannot be forgotten. That's why I really want a shiny Wooloo.
Let's go on for one.
Do you know how many times did that guy have to...
When you say how many times, what you mean is how many hours?
How many hours? Oh, that's worse. How many hours?
A lot.
68.
I don't think I wanted that much.
Yeah, and just since we're name-checking good Pokemon designs, the fossils, all of them, I know that people hate the fossils because they want to see the full forms, and I feel like I understand why, but it misses the point of why people like the fossil designs, and it's the abomination angle that is the selling point, and Rinregius, because that is also basically an abomination.
Yeah, in fact, reining it back ever so slightly to the term art direction, I think the artistic choice of making the four fossils that all cross over with each other, and the kind of thematic, the theming of the Pokemon, stuff like Berserker, Corviknight, the sort of steel industrial feel, Galarian Weezing, Sirfetch'd, that all of the new designs feel like they fit the theme of Galar quite well. Which is also true of Sun and Moon, and also X and Y. But that's just I think a theme with new Pokemon now is that they focus a bit more on where this Pokemon lives rather than what they want to design.
Yep.
Awesome. Okay, this category, I find it really bizarre that I struggled so much with this category. Best soundtrack. Now, you can both corroborate that the soundtrack is usually the first thing I talk about in the game.
Yeah.
I like the music to Banjo-Kazooie, to Pikmin. Some of my favourite franchises of all time are because I love the soundtrack. Viva Pinata. The soundtrack to Viva Pinata, there's a theme that is one of my favourite themes of all time. It's so beautiful. Anyway, so best soundtrack. My honourable mention, I feel like it's inappropriate not to mention Smash Ultimate because it's the best soundtrack of all time, because it has the best soundtracks for the best games of all time. I think we could agree there. But that didn't release this year. So do either of you two have any real suggestions?
I actually somehow managed to come up with two since I'm sitting here. One is only a very, very brief honourable mention, and that is in that Sword and Shield, you can hear bagpipes in a bunch of places. And I appreciate that. I realise nobody does, but Scottish blood, so it does to you. And the other one was in Civilization 6, there are there's loads and loads of themes that play depending on what era you're in. But it also changes depending on what civilization you're playing. So you'll get a slightly different arrangement if you're playing as Arabia than if you're playing as England or as
Oh, I quite like
Egypt.
that.
And it really now does wonders for like the feel of the game. And a lot of the time, the theme's quite grandiose as well. So you'll a lot of the time, Gandhi might be trying to nuke you, but at least you're going down with style.
Just because that's a relevant anecdote, the reason Gandhi is so leery is because in the original Civ games, there's a clause that says at some point in the game, Gandhi's aggression level goes down by 2, but because he starts at 1, it means it cycles back around, so it becomes the most aggressive you could possibly be. And they, because of the meme of Gandhi being super leery, they kept that in for the whole game. But it also kind of reminds me of Jump Up Superstar in Smash Ultimate, the level where like different musicians get added in depending on who's floating around the stage. I thought that was really neat, the way it like augments the track. Charlotte, did you have a pick?
No, I don't really have much to add, I think. I mean, as Dan said, there's been a couple of times I think of Pokemon Sword and Shield when I've been like, oh, this is jazzy. A couple of the towns coming up, but I don't think I have any standout picks.
Well, I'm going to jump in. My gold award is for Sword and Shield, purely because of the one track, and I heard it. You hear it in the first half hour of the game, and it's the Smouldering Weld theme when the wolves start barking in the background. That is an amazing track. In fact, when we pause in between categories, if you don't know what I'm talking about, listen to that track. Such a fantastic song. I actually listen to it while I'm revising. There's also a similar track in Link's Awakening where you're in like an animal village, and the soundtrack is all of the instruments are different animals making their sound, and it's a bit weird, but it works. And my honourable mention is Goose Game, because the music is very, very minimalistic. In fact, unless something is happening, there's no music going on. But because of that, it's really contextually relevant, and it kind of builds tension. There's like I don't know what the proper word is, but there's like a piano theme that plays when you're running away, and it makes you go, uh-oh, better get away. So Goose Game, I think, does music really, really well. But yeah, my pick is Smothering World from Sword and Shield. Our next category is Best DLC. This is a suggested one by Charlotte, so she better have a good answer. This is the best paid or free DLC, and I'm also including deluxe editions, which include all the DLC in that category as well. So would you like to start, Charlotte?
I would love to, because I think the best DLC is, well, basically all of the Overcooked DLC. Though, special shout out to the Carnival one.
You like the Carnival one?
Yeah, I don't know, as a team, I feel we really enjoyed that. There were some really cool
Didn't we
new mechanics
try and kill each other?
Yeah, but that's Overcooked in general.
Yeah, but did we properly try and kill each other?
I mean, yeah, and Overcooked is definitely the closest I've come to being murderous. But no, in all seriousness, I just think that, I mean, granted, I didn't buy it, so, but that in itself is crazy. Like, we can play it online just because, and we can all play the DLC, even though only one of us has actually bought it, which is very generous, frankly.
Yeah, and another tick for Overcooked. This has only just come to my mind, and I'll forget it by the time I come to actually the right segment. The fact that Overcooked's opening splash screen is, if you want to use any of this, feel free.
Yeah.
They're just so chill.
Oh, they're so chill. And, yeah, besides the fact, obviously, it just seems like great value for money. The DLC seemed to really add extra stuff to the game. Like, they were completely different new mechanics, and the maps felt very different, and you can you sink so much time into them, just like you would the actual game.
For reference, I think if we exclude the fact we each have a copy, I think I paid about 20 quid for Overcooked 2's base game, and I would guess that took about 15 hours. And I think I spent another 20 quid on the season pass, which has been another 10, 15 hours.
Yeah, and we haven't actually done we haven't done the 4 stars.
Have we actually finished everything? Did we finish the carnival?
No.
Oh no, we had the campfire one, didn't we? Still.
Yeah. So for me, definitely that.
Yeah. What about you, Dan? And you've picked the carnival one specifically.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed all of them, but yeah, the carnival one was good.
Dan?
I think I hadn't really thought this was going to count, but I think I bought the Mario vs. Rabbids DLC this year because I bought it with coins that I had spare from having bought Smash digitally. So I think it must have been this year. I'm not sure whether I would consider it like. I don't think like it's gold, premium, A-star standard DLC necessarily, but it is definitely DLC done right. I think, and when we discussed it the other day, I think probably you described it best, which was that the people making the base game clearly decided they wanted to make more of this game, and it's significantly different. There's a load more sort of characters, collectibles, all that kind of stuff, all the stuff that you enjoyed about the original, and you can sort of enjoy it either completely separately or you can start sort of mix and matching all the bits together. So I think it's just I think it's more what you would almost sort of expect from a standard game DLC in a way that you don't get quite so much at the moment.
Nintendo's not big on that, is they? Are they?
Yeah, well, I just feel like in both cases it's something that it's not something that should have already been in the game. It is extra stuff.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Because I know Breath of the Wild announced the Champion's Ballad DLC before. Okay, I don't know that for sure. I feel like Breath of the Wild, when it launched, we were like, okay, there's DLC coming. And that generally, as a practice, leaves a bit of a bitter taste in my mouth because I think, oh, yeah, but you're just doing that so you can make more money out of it, aren't you? Whereas...
Yeah, you shouldn't really be going into a game thinking, right, I'm about to spend 40, 45 quid on this or whatever you're going to spend on it. And already know that you're going to end up spending more.
Yeah, but I definitely agree. The Donkey Kong Rabbids DLC, whatever that's actually called, and Overcooked are both really good examples of DLC done right. My personal gold pick is Overcooked 2, but specifically the Hangry Horde one, because I felt like that was the one that introduced the most novel gimmick in the Horde, the like zombie carrots and stuff that you're trying to feed to keep them away. I felt that was the most unique of the 4 DLC packs.
And was that the one that introduced the guillotines as well?
Probably. It's pretty guillotine-y kind of level design, isn't it?
Yeah. Dan loved those guillotines.
But my honourable mention is Banjo. Because, Banjo. But also, it would be my gold, because obviously Banjo is my favourite character in Smash. Because who would have thought Banjo in Smash, right? But as we've already kind of discussed, I don't think Smash Ultimate does DLC as well as the other examples we've given have. Smash Ultimate does feel more like they're trying to get more money out of people. Particularly competitively.
Yeah.
Oh, Pokken.
They were expensive.
I don't know when. I think that was announced. That came out last year. But it was...
Yeah.
I paid £20 for... Actually, I probably paid full price for Pokken. But I paid full price for it, and then they were like, oh, here's £10, and you get one character.
Yeah, it's outrageous.
Ugh. One thing I was going to say is, with the Mario & Rabbids DLC, it's a bit interesting now, because the DLC, I assume, is between 10 and 15 quid. A ballpark guess.
Yeah.
You can get the full Mario & Rabbids game now for about that price. Whereas because it's DLC, that will never ever drop in value.
Yeah, that is a bit odd.
So I think the general value of DLC changes quite considerably when the second-hand market exists for games, or the depreciation of games exists as it does. But yeah, I think. I mean, Overcooked is pretty much the only game we've all played together this year, isn't it? Besides Smash for me and Dan.
Yeah. And the DLC has gone a long way to keeping that going. And I feel like it's one of those things where we could have easily at any point gone, okay, well, these extra bits of DLC, we might come back to that. But I feel like I finished about 4 or 5 separate Overcooked games.
Mm.
Yeah.
And that's just insane, really.
I do have a small shout out as well. And kind of an anticipated DLC, I think, probably for both me and Dan, which is the new Civ DLC, which we haven't gotten around to playing yet because we're trying to still get some more out of the base game, but I think we're both looking forward to that. Quite a lot of new mechanics that we're interested in.
Yeah.
And they added Hot Seat.
Did they?
And Hot Seat, and that was free. That wasn't part of the DLC, so they updated base Civ with the Hot Seat.
So you can do like a couch Civ game?
Yep, that's what me and Dan have started now.
No way.
Yeah.
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 Hot diggity daffodil. That's amazing.
The good thing, the really good thing, actually, is that you can save it.
Yeah.
So
we're still in that first game because we've not had to sit there for about 12 hours, just kind of.
Yeah, and Trajan's tried to obliterate me a number of times. But yes.
I'd just like to point out, on a very much a side note, that I am winning.
Yeah, I think
But anyway.
Tremendous. Most impactful, this category is a bit open to interpretation. These are just the games that have the biggest effect on you. Who wants to go first?
Well, my pick is Yoshi. For one particular reason, which is the Crochet Clowns. And if you haven't seen them, you should probably be glad. Because they're terrifying. But terrifying in a good way, because I was so surprised by them. I think Dan can confirm that when I first played the level that they were in, I was terrified and shocked, and I think my jaw just dropped and I couldn't do anything. And I instantly made Dan play it. I tried my hardest to make Charlie play it, which is cool, because I knew you'd hate it.
Never.
But yeah, whenever I think of Yoshi, I think of that, and it was just a really good moment. We had a great time, I think, playing those levels. Yeah.
Dan, do you have picks?
Most impactful, I think. I'm only going to do this a very light touch on this one, so otherwise we're going to keep duplicating. But I feel like I want to nominate Overcooked 2 for this category purely on the basis of the fact that you can mix and match where you are to play Overcooked so easily. So you can play all of you in the same room, all of you online, and then, crazily, some combination of both, which is actually something that is as rare as I'm making it sound. The only other thing I can think where you can do that in quite the same way are things like Halo.
The old Halo games you can. I couldn't tell you any other examples, though.
No, and I think that's something...
There might have been some in old Xbox games where you could have a guest and an online.
To be fair, that's what I'm doing on Overcooked, so technically I'm guesting rather than having my own
But it's
save file.
invaluable because and I might be wrong on this, but I believe we first played it all on Charlie's Switch.
Yep.
And we picked up the same save, doing
Yeah.
it on 2 different switches, and
Yeah.
that was so good.
It feels like Overcooked is one of the games that were designed by people who play games and love games.
Yeah.
Are they still indie? I know Overcooked feels like it started out as indie, but they might have been bought by now.
I don't know. I'd have to fact check that.
But yeah, if I was confident that Overcooked was an indie game, then it would definitely be one of my indie picks. But yeah, it's amazing. I forgot what category we're in. Most impactful. Yeah, you're right, actually. Just the Smash doesn't do it, whereas where it should, it just should. Because the main reason why couch co-op doesn't necessarily work for games is like loading separate areas at once, but it's all on the same screen. The experience is literally no different for me playing on my own on my TV compared to you two playing on one console on your TV.
Yeah, and I'd just like to do an aside on that briefly, where Smash really fails with that, is that when you're playing online with your friend in an arena, you cannot join two people locally to that arena, but you can play quick play online against random opponents with two people co-op. So the functionality, it nakedly exists there, but they don't actually allow you to do it because presumably it would require a tiny bit more maintenance or a new menu or something. And it's a shame because it's a big barrier to actually having people play Smash. Isn't the point of Smash that you want to get as many people in as possible in one game?
Yeah, and I think there's been plenty of times where you guys have sat down and played Smash, and it's not even necessarily a case of, like, we often will sit down and play Overcooked, obviously, because we've enjoyed it, but we would sit down and all play Smash, we just can't.
Yeah, I make a conscious effort whenever I'm putting in the chat to say, do you want to play Overcooked or Smash? Not because if I know, like, three of us could want to play Smash, and me suggesting playing Smash would not work. Like,
yeah, which is crazy.
Smash is meant to be the ultimate party game. It's just bizarre.
I just remembered, just because it's only fair, Mario Kart 8 also lets you join two people located in multiplayer online session.
It does, but then also that whole system doesn't work very well at its core.
Yeah.
Whereas we do occasionally have lag-related issues, and recently we had some crashes in Overcooked, but I'm willing to put that on my connection in my flat rather than anything else. Yeah. Which might be unfair. My most impactful, I've got quite a few actually. I put Mario Maker because I did some streams with it, and now it feels like it's a streaming game. It's just I never touch it outside of streaming, and that's kind of makes it a bit special for me. The other one, I put the Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee and Sword and Shield Nuzlocke that I did this year. Obviously, it's a Nuzlocke because they actually there were times when I was genuinely tearful from losing a Pokemon in those. But easily the most impactful game I've had is Ark Survival Evolved, because nothing in the entire world is more heartbreaking than spending all my resources to tame a really high-level Argentavis, stupid pigeon, for it to just die. Hate it. I hate it. But I have a story which did genuinely make me tear up and cry, at work as well. So long story, I was in the car with a colleague, and he had to pick up his kid to, like, on the way somewhere and drop him off, whatever. And he got in the car, and my work colleague said, "Oh, you know that series you've been watching on YouTube? This is the guy." And the little kid was so excited. He was so excited to be, like, talking to the Let's Go Pikachu Nuzlocke guy. How crazy is that? So yeah, I even though it's a bit cheating, Let's Go Pikachu is my most impactful game this year. And that conversation hadn't even happened when I was writing the categories and the script and stuff. That happened like yesterday.
Oh wow.
So yeah, shout outs. So, timeless is the category. This is about the games that you played this year that will stand the test of time. Games that we will continue to talk about 10 years from now. Whether that be because they were a singular experience that you will never be able to relive again, or an experience that you'll continue to want to have forever. Now, my picks are one from each sort of side of that. Link's Awakening. I played Link's Awakening. I picked this Link's Awakening for this category, because it's already a remake, and it's a really faithful remake, almost one-to-one in terms of the actual gameplay. And the remake only changed quality of life improvements and, of course, the graphics. Now, what actually makes a game that lasts forever, what makes a Nintendo game that you can continue to play year after year after year, is that the gameplay is always really good. Link's Awakening is really good, and the gameplay is from like 10, 20 years ago already. It's already timeless, they've just made it look good as well. So that was my pick for a game that will always be good, in my opinion. Now, my pick for a game that I don't think I will ever be able to play again, I want to ask you a question, and I'm going to direct this at Dan. What makes Portal, Professor Layton, and Star Wars a timeless experience?
Well, I think the problem with them, it's weird talking with the problem, but you are never going to get the same experience playing it through the second, third, nth time as you would playing it through in the original.
Precisely. You already know all the answers to the puzzles in Professor Layton and Portal, and, spoiler alert, Darth Vader is Luke's father. That's never going to be a revelation again. Untitled Goose Game is a game about exploring the possibilities and finding solutions to problems. It's a puzzle game, but it's a creative puzzle game. And you can't be creative twice for the same problem. You can really try, but as soon as you've experienced it once and you know the answer, you are never going to have that experience again. And that is why I think Untitled Goose Game is a timeless experience. So that's my main nomination, my gold pick for timelessness. What about you, Charlotte?
Well, I kind of have two, I guess. The first, and you've already mentioned it, I've been playing quite a lot of Layton this year. And yeah, I guess you've already covered that, but I think it's always, as well, it's always one of those things that you all look back on and think about, particularly since it does affect kind of, and I guess this comes into Impactful as well, but I've said to Dan on multiple occasions that he'll come at me with some kind of strange question, and I'll apply Layton logic. That's just great, you know.
Wow.
And my other is Cities, which is slightly cheesy because I might have started it last year, but no one knows. So yeah, it's just a fantastic game, and one that I think I'll probably always look back on. I mean, I put so many hours into it when I first got it.
Yeah,
For
you
the
did.
amount of time I've had it compared to some other games, I've put so many hours into it.
Yeah, Cities I feel like is a game that I will never uninstall on my Switch, because at some point there will always be that part of me that goes, I'm going to start a new city.
Yeah, it's just kind of a classic. Really.
Dan, did you have a pick before I ask my question?
This is a bit of a weird choice, but and I actually think I was going to pick it for a different reason, which I might explain, but now I'm going to pick it for the reason I'm about to give. So for me, it's Civilization 6. The reason that would fit most accurately with the title is that you will never be able to emulate that first game that you had, the first proper successful game you had on Civ, where, for example, Cyrus of Persia just decides he hates you, and you do what any self-respecting world leader would do and wipe him off the map. And I don't mean just sort of repel him. I mean actually take every single city he owns, so that you have war grievances until the end of time, but it doesn't matter because you've wiped Cyrus off the map. That's one of those things where you can keep having as many Civ games as you like, but unless the Civ game is significantly different in terms of DLC and stuff like that, you won't quite be able to emulate. It's funny because I have similar Civ games that were true of the Civilization Revolution game for Xbox 360, where the first proper game we had on there, I'll remember that. That's a sort of timeless event.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think we played 2 or 3 in total with a different selection of people each time. But that experience, I think we did it and we thought, I'm really glad we did that. But it's never going to happen again.
Yeah, I mean, it's taught me a great deal about diplomacy and about
or lack thereof.
World stage. Well, I mean, there was just that occasion where I had there was a.
I'm going to stop recording in a moment.
A stretch of water that led to an archipelago of islands that I don't think anyone had quite twigged I'd colonised. It would have given away the state at which I'd gotten to in the game. Another player wanted to go past this thing, which would have unveiled this archipelago of islands. So I just said no, and he was just like, "Oh, fair enough."
Yeah, good times.
Lost him and everyone in the game. The other reason I was going to nominate it for Timeless, which is almost the wrong reason, which is that you could boot up a Civ game, and even if you played as every civilization and gone for every kind of victory, you would still get a different game every single time you booted it up. You could go on there now, click random, and the experience could be completely different. So I think that qualifies.
Yeah. My slightly abstract, not entirely related question. The concept of a timeless game, I think the Game Awards had a category that was about ongoing games, like Pokemon Go, and Destiny has become an ongoing game now. But my main 2 are Minecraft and Fortnite. Would you call those timeless games, or do you think they're games that have just lasted a really long time?
It's a bit of a weird one. I don't think... Weirdly, I think Fortnite has its own sort of... It's carved out its own category in a way, where it's... the impact Fortnite's had is, completely independent. I don't know whether... Timeless... I feel like it suits Portal 2 a lot more. The thing with Fortnite is if you booted it up now, we wouldn't have the same thing that we did when we booted it up 2 years ago or how long ago it was. So it's a bit weird. Whereas Minecraft, I feel like it still feels like Minecraft. You might be able to get away with calling that timeless. I don't know.
Okay, that's just a thought I was having.
Yeah.
Because now that it's becoming a bit more common for games to release and then try and sustain itself for as long as it physically can. I guess my main thought was whether that was them trying to create like a new like Minecraft is just it's almost a platform now rather than a game.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think both of your definitions are games where it's an experience that you just have once, and it will always be that once.
Yeah.
I think I can agree with that. Well, that's why I picked Goose Game over Link's Awakening, so I do agree with that. Okay, we're actually getting quite close to Game of the Year now. Our next one is Best Single Player Experience. So, yeah. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, so I think what I would probably nominate for this is Civilization 6, which might be the third time I've nominated it now. But it was one of those things where I ummed and ahed about getting it, really wasn't sure, wasn't sold on the fact it didn't have hot seat. So the real reason I think this qualifies is because I had to buy it as a single player experience. There was no option at the time for hot seat, so it had to sell itself to me on the basis of it being a single player experience. And then I sank so many hours into it. It was supposed to be my stopgap before Mario Maker, and I'm pretty sure it's far eclipsed Mario Maker now in terms of playtime. It's horrifically addictive. So many ways to play that the game serves up. You can play stupidly long games as well. But yeah, I think it's one of those things where I have continued playing because it's fun to play. And for single player, that's kind of what you want. So yeah, I think simple as that, really.
Excellent. I think it's quite interesting now that it could feasibly also become best multiplayer game.
Yeah, ironically, yeah.
It's quite nice. It feels like one of very, very, very few games that can actually transition from being one to the other.
Yeah.
Charlotte?
Yes, sort of have two. So, my first is Cities. Again, sort of potentially a last year game, but much like Down on Civ, I've sunk so many hours into it, and I would happily go back and sink some more. There's just always so many different things to do. There's different maps, different kind of, yeah, you can completely redesign it every time. It can be entirely different. And it is challenging too.
The number of times in my experience you're like, all right, finally started making money out of these dicks. And then they're like, a whole wave of them start dying and you think, oh crap. And there's a whole other thing you have to fix.
Yeah, and it takes on a life of its own. You kind of end up having this weird little story of like what your town's aiming to do or has done, or yeah, I just really enjoy it. I just think it's very good, and I can only imagine how people on PC. I mean, I've seen pictures and different things that people do with it, and it's insane.
Oh yeah,
it's like so accurate. So yeah, my other is Yoshi, because it is just a really fun game, and honestly, it's just full of joy. Just like the people who made it clearly absolutely love Yoshi. And that's nice to play, you know. Yeah.
Well, I was going to abstain from this category because my top three single player experiences are also very heavily featured in my top 3 games of the year. But there was one I'd forgotten about, which was Hyrule Warriors. Bit of a weird one, I know. I bought it as a stopgap for between something. I think it might have even been in like an Easter sale, so I just thought, yeah, I'll pick that up. And it's really good. It's got that same like we talked about earlier. This kind of zombie hack and slash. It's got the satisfying combos you can pull off, the really cool super moves you can do that look really cool, and it incorporates all of the main areas, soundtrack, characters from all of the different Zelda universes, all the bosses, and it also creates its own new characters, new areas, which I think is really good, because a lot of games that do draw from all of their other respective parts then aren't very good games in their own right. Whereas I think Hyrule Warriors did it really well, and that was actually a really surprising game for me. And also, this is a bit of an offshoot, but I was just thinking, how wicked would it be in City Skylines if you could play it multiplayer, where me and Charlotte had cities next to each other, and I was like, don't worry, I got your funeral care covered. You just sort out electrics, all right?
Yeah, that would be really cool. Actually.
That would be sick.
You just like trade with each other. Or...
And
that would be good.
yeah, one of my disappointments with Hyrule Warriors is that it would be so good multiplayer, but it just doesn't do it, which is a bit sad. But yeah, Hyrule Warriors is my best single player experience. Best multiplayer experience. This is our last category before we actually get onto our games of the year. Now, another rhetorical question for you. What makes a multiplayer game? Throwing your controller. That's what makes a multiplayer game. There is no such thing as a good multiplayer game in which you don't want to throw your controller in the bin. Overcooked 2 is hands down the best multiplayer experience. Chaos, stress, the fact we can't spend more than an hour playing it without a crisis. It's a really simple...
Dan crying on the floor.
I would like to extend the idea that you want to throw. I want to throw my teammates in the bin.
Honestly, I've not gotten so angry at you ever.
Brilliant.
Oh my god. Both of our most angry moments of Dad have been around food.
That's true.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a touchy subject for you, isn't it, Dad?
What is that?
Slightly more seriously, it's hands down the best multiplayer experience. In my opinion, one of the best multiplayer experiences ever. That might just be hype because we're currently playing it. I'm willing to put my hand up and say that might change. But it's 2 buttons. It's got a really strong, effective difficulty curve. You get a genuine sense of achievement out of completing levels. And I think where it shines is the degree of completion for different styles of player. Because I don't think we'd have got as much entertainment out of it if it was literally every time it's just pass or fail.
Yeah.
Because there were times where we were just like, let's just 1-star it, I don't want to do that. And then there were times where we went, we can 4-star this. Let's freaking do it.
Yeah. I mean, I think as a multiplayer game, it just has all of the key ingredients. Firstly, something that we mentioned earlier, which is just that it's so easy to play in any kind of combination, and that's key. But also, and as you said a minute ago, the fact that it does rile you up, despite the fact you're on a team, that is fun, and you just get so into it, and that has surely got to be key. But also, as a small side note, we had a friend come and visit, played it with him, and it doesn't matter that you're like starting halfway through or doing something, just jumping in at a random point. It's still fun, and you still get into it so quickly.
Just before Dan chimes in with his praise, I want to tell you how disappointed I am now that I didn't frame my argument around a recipe.
Yeah, you did say key ingredients. Did you realise
that?
Oh, damn. Dan, do you want to continue?
Yeah. I mean, it's, to be honest, short of a few... the word that we sometimes find ourselves using is jank. Occasionally, there is a little bit of sort of jankiness. If you could bench that, there is an argument for it being, I'm pretty sure it is, if I wanted to sell a Switch to someone, I would use that game.
Yeah, I showed it to my mum when I went to stay with her for a bit, and she was like, oh yeah, I really like the idea of that game. I think I've seen it on Facebook for a few times, and I looked at it and I thought, that looks really good. I could play that. The fact that my mum, who doesn't play games and wants to just, have a casual experience and have a bit of fun, and then there's like us who sits there for like 45 minutes trying to make as many olive pizzas as possible to max the level cap.
Yeah.
Which I'd like to point out was the wrong move.
It was
I said so straight away.
Yeah, it was the wrong move.
But for the right reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In a way, it makes it worse. But yeah, no, I think it's probably, yeah, it's the definitive multiplayer experience on Switch, I would say. I'm pretty sure if a similar thing had released for DS, it would have been the definitive multiplayer experience on DS as well.
Yep.
I would also, since we're on multiplayer experiences, I will very quickly add in, I've been playing a fair amount of Apex Legends this year. Not so much with full party, so it's actually kind of difficult to say fairly. But as far as Battle Royale games go, shooter Battle Royales that aren't Tetris 99, obviously, it's actually it's really good. You drop in, you're in a weirdly, it's actually 3 people in the squad, so it's the only game in the world that the 3 of us could have played, ironically. But you drop in, you have different characters that have different abilities, so you can sort of change it up a little bit. It's still a battle royale in that you will still feel like there's a little bit of like dead air, but everything's a little bit more. It's like 60 people are in the battle royale rather than 100, and the map's a bit smaller, so it all kind of gets kicking off a bit quicker. And it is just, yeah, it's really good. I think I'm sort of mentioning it because last year in the same category I would have mentioned Splatoon, so maybe even the year before, but yeah.
Very true. So we're all in agreement for once that Overcooked 2 is phenomenal. I'm going to put my hand up now and say Overcooked 2 qualifies for my game of the decade. Not my game of the decade, but it's in my top 10 games of the decade currently. But I am not going to pick it for one of my games of the year. More because I think between the 3 of us, we will have covered it enough by now.
Yeah, we will have.
I think objectively it is a masterpiece, but it's, yeah. I just wanted to put that here along with the Overcooked hype rather than segment it and put it elsewhere where it doesn't really fit.
Yeah.
Overcooked, man. It's a good game. And it's got Kevin.
This character.
It's got a pretty decent soundtrack as well. Not amazing, but there's definitely tunes that I hum. It's a good game. Game of the year. We're not there yet, though. So I've picked top 5. You two have top 3s, correct?
Yeah.
So I'm just going to blast through my 4th and 5th choices first. My 5th, these two aren't in any particular order. I feel like I'd be being untruthful to myself if I didn't put Sword and Shield at number 5. It's not objectively a very good game. It's not a very bad game either. I'd say it's a solid. Pokemon carries it as a game. But in terms of the games I've played, I think that is the one that I've got the 5th most enjoyment out of overall. Number 4 is Ark. Now, I touched on this already. Ark is a hot mess. On Switch specifically, I should confirm. Ark is a hot mess. The graphics on it are appalling. It crashes. The load times are really poor. But it's really fun. I genuinely grew attached to my stupid pigeon. It died. But I got genuinely attached. I got genuinely really excited when I was wandering around finding a new dinosaur and like, oh, I wonder how I do that. And genuinely scared when I walked around the corner and a massive dinosaur that I'd never seen before just started biting my head off. Ark is a game that I really want to put as my gold game of the year, but I cannot overlook how many faults it has. because it has so many. And again, you two can agree with this. 2017, I was going on about Xenoblade Chronicles 2. That was my game of the year. Last year, I was going on about Torna, the Golden Country. That was my game of the year. And this year, I was banging on about how everyone should be playing Ark, because Ark is the best and the worst game ever. Correct?
Yeah.
On any other platform, Ark would be my game of the year. Ark on Switch is not my game of the year, very sadly. So we'll move on to Bronze. Who would like to start Bronze?
Sure. My bronze is Yoshi. Because I think it is a very good game. It looks good, it's fun to play. My only real criticism of it is that it's too short. And its kind of tactic for getting you to go back and play more is to just play the same levels over again to collect more collect more stuff or unlock more things, and it's not really any different. Like, I wanted to just be able to get all of those collectibles the first time I play the level, not have to go back literally 5 times to do it, because it only tells you afterwards that there's something else you could get, and that's slightly annoying. But the game in and of itself is fun. It's clearly made by people that love it, and just enjoyed it.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair assessment. And one of my key narratives this year was trying to work out what makes a game worthwhile in terms of its length. And I think that's something I'll save till after I've announced my game of the year. But the length of a game, to me, I don't understand anymore. My whole perspective has changed. So, Dan, what is your Bronze award for Game of the Year?
I'm going to preface this by saying that I don't feel like I played enough games that the Bronze award was that competitive. But I think, given the amount of time I've spent playing it, and although I have been frustrated playing it, Apex Legends has been really good. It probably due to the nature of the Battle Royale element. You get that feeling when you win a game like you actually had to fight and earn it. It's not like, I think that's sort of what makes the Battle Royale genre in general quite addictive, is that you don't just win half your games like you would in a normal shooter, where you just sort of, you spawn in and you're either on the team that wins or you're on the team that loses. Very often in Battle Royale games, you're on the team that loses. I've definitely had a lot of fun playing, a lot of not fun also, occasionally, where, and the game is not 100%, it's not the definitive Battle Royale experience, I don't think, but there's a lot going for it that I think makes it worthy.
I think it's nice that you have the different characters and stuff as well.
Yeah.
Different abilities. And some of the game modes they've introduced this year have been pretty good.
Yes, they rotate the game modes out, and in a way that Fortnite kind of did, where it brought in different game modes. I think what is nice about the Apex game modes is that they are like significantly. It's basically you're playing a completely different game, but with the shooter engine that runs the Battle Royale.
Yeah. It's not just like the same game, but duos, the same games.
Yeah. Or 50v50 or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's a completely different.
Fundamentally different game modes.
Yeah.
Awesome. I do think if I'd been more active on the Xbox, the Apex would have been a game I played a lot. Purely because it's, again, Battle Royale shooter. This, I don't want to frame this in a way that makes it sound like I hate Fortnite. I don't, but like a high quality style shooter, not like
Yeah.
a toy guns kind of thing.
Yeah.
Oh, crumbs! That makes this back to me, isn't it? My bronze pick. Now, I have a question for you. Why do you play Minecraft? I don't know, like build stuff. Why do you build stuff? Like fun. Dragon Quest Builders 2 does something that Minecraft can't ever do. It actually contextualizes every building you make. Everything you do in that game has a purpose. You build a kitchen so that your townspeople are more friendly. They're more friendly, they get more productivity done. And there's specific like ingredients or types of ingredients that go into every house you build. And I spent an awfully long time building my first little village and trying to get everything to fit very nicely and thematically and with a build palette. And then there's boss battles, and the bosses walk in and they just destroy everything. Well, they don't literally destroy everything, but you have to make a conscious choice to kill the boss before it starts wrecking your town. And although it has a really restrictive post-game that kind of turned me off, and it went on much longer than it should have done, I think it clocked in around between 60 to 80 hours in the end when I got to the credits, and realistically should have been about 40. The second half of the game was a bit pointless. But the fact that it can contextualize and motivate me to build things in the form of a story makes it my third best game this year. Our second favourite game of 2019, Dan.
Yes. I mentioned briefly earlier that it was a stopgap before another game, but it ended up being a game that I loved in its own right. Civilization 6. Plenty of the reasons I've already mentioned, but I think what it did was I felt like it had to fight for my attention. There were a lot of times where I considered not buying it, and then even when I did eventually buy it, I felt like I was thinking to myself, is this going to be a mistake? And then the game had so much depth that I was worried that by the time the DLC came out, months and months and months after I bought it, I still wasn't going to be done with the base game. It became a case of one more turn. So it was one more turn at 9 o'clock, and then it was one more turn at 10 o'clock, and then it was one more turn at 11 o'clock. I feel like it's not fair to say that it's not in my top 3 if it's been sinking its teeth into me that strongly.
I'm genuinely surprised that's not your top pick.
Yeah, it was definitely up there.
I mean, that's what you told me yesterday it was.
Betrayal.
This is interesting.
I don't think I said in cast iron terms, but
no, but that is the only one you were like, I think it's probably. So this,
yeah.
Okay.
Strange.
Weird.
I like it.
Zesty.
I guess I'll go next. And it will be no surprise to either of you, or from like all of my categories, that my 2 favourite games this year have been really close. But I had to go with the game that spoke to me on more of a deep personal level. And sadly, deep personal level and Goose don't go together quite so well. So Untitled Goose Game is my silver game of the year this year. Now, Goose Game is the epitome of quality over quantity. It's an incredibly short game. I think if you were to do a run of Portal, the original Portal, it would be about the length of Untitled Goose Game. Now, it does bulk that out with post-game stuff and some other bits and pieces and challenges that you can do, but it is a very short game. But every single second of my time playing that game was magic. It gives you a fairly linear experience but has so much more creativity than Dragon Quest Builders, which is a game that's designed around building what you want. It has more personality, I think, than almost any other game on the market. That feeling I got when GLaDOS first gave me a sassy comment in Portal 1 was the same feeling I got when I honked at a random dude just as he was about to throw a dart and he ends up throwing it at someone's head.
I suddenly want to play this game.
Honestly, it is spectacular. And it's a little indie developer. I think this might be their first game that they've released. House, I think it's called. A little Australian company. The soundtrack gives it so much more tension, it amps it up. And it's very creative and sort of loose. The soundtrack is dynamic, so it a bit like what you were saying about... It was Civ, right? You were saying? A bit like that, where depending on what items you're carrying, etc., the music's composition will change. It's quite a clever algorithm behind it, actually. And it is very, very bizarre for a game like Goose Game to be this good. But it's truly a masterpiece. One of very, very few games that, in my opinion, no gamer should go their life without playing at some point. I think that summarises Goose Game pretty well. And it's only... I think it's retails for £17, which is a lot for the time, but you can't put a price on your first Portal playthrough. You just can't. So Untitled Goose Game is my silver game this year. Charlotte, you're next up.
Yes, my silver is City Skylines. It's just I've sunk so many hours into it, as I've already said, and I would happily keep going back and doing that. It's just really enjoyable. It's challenging, and yeah, it's creative. It's great to talk about when you've made a city, and I go around telling Dan's family that I've just killed an entire city accidentally, and that I'm a terrible mayor. But I've had some very successful ones too, I'd just like to say. But yeah, it's just a really good game, and I can only imagine how fantastic it is on things like PC, because if it was on that, it would probably easily be Game of the Year, if not like Game of the Decade. Like, incredible amount of detail in it is, yeah, it's just amazing. Yeah.
Can I just say, from this discussion, you two sound like proper psychos, throwing bottles at people's heads, killing off entire cities. I'm just a happy little goose who wants to cause a bit of mischief.
Didn't you just say someone threw a dart into someone else's head?
Yeah, not the goose.
No, but you made it happen.
No, I was just goosing around, mate.
Well, I was just trying to be a good person. It's not my fault the traffic is so hard to control.
Oh, and one last thing.
Turns out dead ends are the answer, by the way. They're fantastic.
Dead ends, seriously?
Yeah, my next city, I made it a bit more like a Milton Keynes grid system. So I would have like big main roads, but everything in between I would just do like curvy kind of dead ends almost. I'd have a few kind of branches going off them, but the dead ends, it just means that they don't try and take shortcuts. They'll just use the big main roads that you want them to be using.
That's a genius.
Yeah, it's really good. Recommend.
I had a thought that I wanted to close out with, and I forgot what it was. Oh, it'll come back to me. So that was our silver picks. Okay, so our gold game of the year this year. We just had a chat off camera and we've agreed that we're gonna not tell you yet. But what we are gonna do is talk about how long a game should be, because this has been a narrative of my whole year in gaming, and Charlotte brought it up earlier with Yoshi's Crafted World. You said that it felt too short.
Yeah.
My question is, did it feel too short, or did you just want more?
That's a good point, and I've not thought of it like that.
Because let me just contextualise a little bit. One of the things that I think makes Untitled Goose Game really, really special is that it's really short, but I didn't finish the game thinking, oh, that was a bit too short. I finished the game going, ooh, I wonder what's next.
Yeah.
And so for a tiny bit more context, when I was talking to you about Sword and Shield, I said, I finished my playthrough in around 15, 20 hours. So that's pretty good length. And then you sort of said, is it? And we kind of touched on this with Fire Emblem being a bajillion hours worth of gameplay, and we didn't want to commit to that. Dragon Quest Builders lasted way too long. Is a game better if it's longer?
I guess it depends on the type of game, but I think there's definitely merit in something being short and you being left wanting more, rather than it going on and it losing any of kind of, that reason why it was good. But yeah, with Yoshi it was definitely the case, and maybe it may well have been that I did just want more, and that's fine. But given that it was a full price game and some of the hours that I've put into other games compared to it, it just doesn't seem as good value for money. Having said that, I did really enjoy it, and I guess it comes down to how you perceive,
Yeah, that is very true.
It's good value for money, but I have put significantly less hours into it than other games. And I feel like there's slightly less reason to go back to it than some other things as well. But it also does feel unfair, because it is fundamentally a different game to something like Cities, which obviously you can go back to infinitely. But then something like Odyssey, I still could go back to, but that is just because it is a huge game.
Yes, Odyssey and Breath of the Wild are other examples where, in my personal opinion, they do kind of overstay their welcome. Mario Odyssey, I got 100% because I did all the fun moons and the moons I was curious about, and there were we'll say 20% of the moons where I didn't actually want to find them because of gameplay reasons. I wanted to find them so I could say I'm finished.
Yeah.
And I think one of you mentioned that you didn't finish. You didn't 100% it for that reason. You just finished doing what you wanted to do and stopped.
Yeah, I think Dan's put less of it than I have. I haven't actually finished it yet, though. In fact, in that sense, I think you're further ahead of me in terms of actually finishing the game.
I think that depends on what metric you use, but
yeah, because I think I've got more moons, but you've actually done the Dark Side or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Which I've not done because it's insanely hard.
That was super hard.
That was great fun.
I've yet to really invest time into that. Time I shall have to invest.
Dan, one of the examples that I certainly think of a lot is you playing Skyrim compared to me playing Skyrim.
Yeah.
Because I know, for me, I put a pretty decent chunk of hours into that game, and then I thought, but there's so much more to do. Can I really be bothered to do all of that? And I thought, no, I'm going to tap out now before I hate Skyrim with blood vengeance. Is there anything in Skyrim you didn't do?
Weirdly, you're not going to believe this answer, but there are multiple quest lines in Skyrim, and so one of the things to bear in mind is that there are some quest lines that when you choose one, you're barred from the other.
Oh, of course, yeah.
So you would have to go through a couple of playthroughs to actually get to do everything in inverted commas. I haven't done even close to everything in Skyrim. That's the base game, not even the DLC. I've probably done more comparatively with the DLC, because when I attacked it from a little bit more of a completionist perspective, and probably enjoyed it less for it. The thing with Skyrim is that because you never have to do the main campaign, nothing feels like post-game, and nothing feels like a side quest either. You just sort of land and do, and for a lot of people it doesn't suit. But I invested an excruciating amount of time on my original Skyrim save and others, one of which I accidentally deleted. And a lot of that was not even necessarily completing any more quests. It was like sort of repeated Dark Brotherhood, like procedurally generated quests, or roaming around, or certainly I've never had a completed map in Skyrim. So that gives you an indication of the fact that you can sink an inordinate amount of time in there. But it's not because I felt the need to go and do every single quest or speak to every NPC. The bit that really struck me actually was on the Skyrim subreddit the other day. I put a clip of someone showing one particular thing. What I noticed was that it was a quest line that I'd never seen, where his wife had been kidnapped. I had no idea that could happen. Now, I did lose my wife for a significant chunk of time. It turns out she was just blending in with the wall. But I've never seen that quest line. I found myself looking at it, just being like, how weird. There was also, there's loads of quest lines like that you've never seen, NPCs you've never seen. And for some people it feels like, oh, well, I'll never be able to speak to all of them. So, and that's kind of how I feel sometimes about Odyssey Moons. But, yeah.
And we
on the flip side, the only other quick mention I have is that the Crysis 3 campaign is about 6 hours long, and I hate how short it is. I really hate how short it is. But there are games that you can spend 6 hours on and enjoy, and it doesn't. When it enters the value for money question, if you consider that part of the question, then obviously that will taint it. But if you can put that to one side, then
yeah, I frequently think about how the original Portal would have been like no more than £10, probably closer to £5, before it became like a cult classic game. And it's one of the most perfect, complete, whole experiences. And similarly, you've got your Laytons, you've got your Overcooked, the sort of budget games that make a really big impact compared to your AAA £60 games that you can put hundreds of hours in and like 2, 3, 5 years down the line just sort of not ever think about again. But yeah, that wasn't strictly relevant, but it feels like a common narrative with a lot of what we've been talking about. And certainly a lot of what I've been thinking about this year. Because 2019 has been the year of really concise, short, but excellent games. So are we ready to go for gold?
yeah.
Finally, it is time to do our gold award for the game of the year. Now, Charlotte, would you like to start? What is the best game you've played in 2019?
The best game I have played this year is definitely Overcooked. As we've already pointed out, it's basically perfect. And I've thoroughly enjoyed playing it every time, and every time I talk about it, I want to play more, even though it makes me want to kill people. Yeah, it's just really, really good. And yeah, I just don't know how it can't be my top game. Really? Done.
Yeah, I think I would follow that by saying that Overcooked 2 is my game of the year as well. For most of the reasons outlined above. But I just think it would be unfair to put anything above it when, if you sort of said to me, between now and the end of 2020, you're gonna have to stick to one game and one game only.
Yeah,
Um,
just so fun.
you know,
And being able to, like, I don't know, when you go and explain it to people, you try and explain it and it sounds terrible. You're like, it's a cooking game. You're just like, right, okay.
I can remember trying to sell this concept to you two, and you being
exactly.
like, "The hell are you talking about?"
Yeah, and it is just amazing, and you put it on and everyone enjoys it. And it is incredible value for money. Never mind the fact that me and Dan haven't actually paid a penny towards it, so it's definitely good value for money for us. But generally, anyway, it's I would happily pay full price for that game. We've gotten so much use out of it.
One of the
and
things
it is amazing
that shocks me about it, though, is that we actually kind of haven't. 25 hours is not as long as it feels like we spend playing that game, which I think is more testament to the amount that we kind of think about it and I don't know what the way to phrase that is, but every time we stop playing we think, oh, is it only been that long?
Yeah, I see what you mean. In the grand scheme of things, it's not many hours, but...
No, I think it's positive. I think it means that we're packing so much gameplay into... there's very little filler guff.
Yeah, maybe that's even partly the answer. It doesn't have to be a long or a short game. It just feels the right length, and it's sometimes hard to say why, but it does.
Yeah. Unless you have anything else to say that we haven't covered already, I'm going to go on to my game of the year, which is Link's Awakening. And Link's Awakening on its own gave me a new perspective on what a game should be, in terms of how long it should be, how much game time you should have with it, how complicated it should be, how the world should be set up. Everything about it has kind of changed how I see a video game. It's the world itself is living. It feels genuinely alive. Every single character is expressive. They're unique. They're a bit weird, which is kind of part of the plot. You kind of walk around and you think, this isn't a Zelda game. This is very different. But it plays like a Zelda game. Why is it so different? And that's kind of what you have to explore throughout the game. The music is solid. It's not fantastic, but it's solid. There's a couple of tracks that are really, really good. There's a really, really beautiful scene, and you probably will have seen the like screenshot of it, where Link is sat on the beach with the Marin, I think her name is, the female character. They're like just watching the sunset, and she's kind of talking about her existential crisis of, oh, am I real? What do I want with my life if I'm not real? Which is really, really powerful. The gameplay is really simple. They don't do anything that overcomplicates things or makes it any more diluted. Because it's a Game Boy game. It's designed around 2 buttons and a joystick. Well, not a joystick, a D-pad. And the way they've transitioned it from that to this is spectacular. Again, the graphics are definitely different, and I think it's different in a good way. And both Link's Awakening and Goose Game share the same feeling I have, where I finished the game and I felt really sad that it was over, but that was completely overtaken by how happy I was having played it. And even though Link's Awakening, even though they both gave me a similar feeling, Goose Game, more so than Link's Awakening, left me wanting more, which is the main reason for picking Link's Awakening. I do think it's a bit weird to pick such a 1-to-1 port for my game of the year, but honestly, there kind of isn't a game that I would pick over these two this year. They're just so magic. And that's what I've come to consider the most important factor in a game now, is that the bit you can't explain, the bit that makes Portal, Goose Game, Link's Awakening, Halo Reach, the Pokemon Red and Blue, those games that will just stay with you, that like random little ingredient that's just sat in the background there, and they both have that. They have buckets full of it. So yeah, Link's Awakening is my nomination. So what we're going to do from there is there will be a poll either in the comments and the description, I don't really know yet, and you will get to vote between Dan, your 3 nominations were Apex Legends, Civilization and Overcooked. Charlotte, you had Yoshi and I can't remember what your silver was. Oh, Cities.
Yep.
And then Dragon Quest Builders 2, Link's Awakening, and Untitled Goose Game. Those are your 8 options. And you're more than welcome to vote on which of those 8 you think is the objective game of the year. But I think if we're being objective, we're all in agreement it's Overcooked 2.
Yeah.
Because no amount of that weird Nintendo magic can outweigh that Overcooked 2 raw, perfect gameplay and style and all of it. So yeah. Is there anything you two would like to add before we wrap up?
No, I don't think so.
Only that I'm interested to know where the games that we know are coming out next year, where they will fall. Things like Animal Crossing, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's very true. One last question for you. We kind of touched on it at the beginning of tonight. We were talking about how we perceive 2019. Do you have any final thoughts about what you think 2019 was like, having extensively gone through all our favourite games and talked about them a bit?
Only that if the year the Switch came out was the one of AAA kind of blockbuster titles, then this has been one, well, pointedly dominated by stuff that is either a curveball or a non-standard option or something that doesn't play like a traditional game. That's all, really.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's been good for games like Link's Awakening, Luigi's Mansion, Yoshi, to some extent Mario Maker had a chance to shine without being obstructed by everyone talking about the new Smash game, everyone talking about Breath of the Wild, where I think stuff like ARMS, Captain Toad, I can't think of any of them. There were lots of games in previous years that were heavily overshadowed.
Yeah.
And I think it's good that they got a chance to shine. One thing is interesting, Mario Maker didn't feature on any of our lists for Game of the Year.
No.
And I get the suspicion that it probably will feature on most people's lists.
Possibly. I think one of those things about Mario Maker, though, is it will be, in a way, what you can make it. So I don't think that it necessarily doesn't feature because it's bad, but just that it hasn't really interacted in the way that it would have for others.
No, I suppose you're right. So that's everything. Thank you for joining me, and thank you for giving me your... It was actually really interesting to hear some of your picks. A lot of them surprised me.
I wasn't expecting to attack The Last of Us. I realised that's quite possibly one of the most controversial things to do. But hey, well, where we are.
yeah. So yeah, thank you everyone for watching. I've been Ninja96, and I'll see you next year. Actually, I won't. I'll see you for Game of the Decade and some other stuff and things. So yeah, peace out. I'm never doing that again.